when we talk about education, there's no way for it not to be messy. And so as we proceed to the podcast and we ask, we ask these same questions to lots of smart people, we're going to find that it's messy. And I think we're going to find sometimes that some of the things they say are and they might offend us. They might, offend our sensibilities, or they may, contradict something we believe really strongly. And I guess what I'm hoping for in the podcast is for us to hear out the opinions, hear out the the data that we get from all these people, and try to boil it down into common principles that keep coming back that do work, and everything else is it's icing on the cake or trapping things around the edges or something that we don't worry as much about. There's this core that comes out as this is important.
Yes. Like you said, education is very complex, and it is because you're dealing with people. I had a principal one time who, after an incident, just kind of looked over at me and was like, this job is just about people, dealing with people. I like to kind of summarize anytime I'm working with young people becoming teachers, or just people becoming teachers, to say, if you just boil it down to, and remember that your students come first, and you need to love your students to a degree. You have to invest that much into them, because they're going to test you and push you, and that's whenever you're going to have to back off for a minute and re-examine things, and start thinking about not just the attitude and not just the lip, but where is that coming from? What's going on in that kid's life? What's happening at home? What's happening outside of the classroom? And more often than not, when I meet with the parents and I get the full story, or at least their side of the story, I immediately have more compassion for that child, which allows me to be more patient to guide them the direction that they need to go. And that has probably been the biggest success, because what happens is the attitudes change. And when the attitudes change, then they can become that curious student that we're looking for. Because although I believe wholeheartedly in maker education and this idea of presenting with a problem and pushing them for it, sometimes you get that kid that gets checked out. And I think it is abnormal. And when you investigate a little bit more, you usually find that there's a reason for it. I'm fortunate to work in a place with pretty well-rounded kids with stable family lives, at least that I know of. My colleagues who work in areas where the family life is not as stable for a number of reasons, or they don't get 3 square meals a day, those types of things, they have a much harder uphill battle, because I have to do that with 2 or 3 kids. They have to do that with 20 or 30 kids. But that's where it starts. You have to go deeper than just the interaction here in the classroom. So I would say that learning doesn't just happen in the classroom, neither does teaching.
I would agree.
Yeah, well, what Clark said reminds me of something you said. We'll wrap with this, and that is that a big fraction of teaching is actually, it's the people. And what is it that you always say?
Well, most of teaching is counseling or psychology.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the subject area is. Most of what you have to do is get their trust so that they'll let you take them someplace they've not been before. And that requires a lot of trust, especially with technology, especially with teachers teaching technology. You just have to get their trust.
Yeah. So, as we go on this little podcast journey, we'll definitely be back to talk to you, I think.
Good. Anytime.
And I definitely need to get you involved a little more here. I think the questions that you ask and the things that you bring up and pull out from the conversations are different than what I would bring out. So thank you guys for taking a few minutes. Thank you for helping us make boot camp really well. Thank you for
thank you
helping
for
us kick off the
hosting
podcast.
Pleasure. Let's do it again.
All right.